From the swamp to the stars, it's time for the UFO report. Let's bring in little Timmy Seanor.
Nobody's gonna know.
They're gonna know.
Well, little Timmy Seanor, it's time for us to do this radio show once again. And what is happening, my man?
Not too much at all. Just doing the thing up here in beautiful Oregon, USA. How are things up in your neck of the woods? You're looking sharp, buddy. Your hair and beard combination is tight.
It is tight right now. And, you know, it's hard to come by around these having a good hair and beard day, you know, ever since I chopped off my beautiful locks. But that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, you're looking great, man. Are you still on the regiment? Because it's looking like you lost weight, too. Am I seeing that?
I did, but I got to get back in the gym.
Yeah.
I've kind of let that slip a little bit. I've just been really tired lately, but I got to get back. I got 4 months to get ready for Las Vegas, so I look pretty just like you do. And, you know, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I know.
You're looking good, though, bud. You've already made leaps and bounds, so just keep it up.
Yeah, as I drink an iced tea here.
Hey, cheers. I'm having a hot tea. Same.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. You know, last week was a very, very weird, strange, difficult political UFO week. And, man, I'm glad we're through last week, man. I am really glad we are through last week and moving on to something different, something new here, man, because, you know, between MUFON, between Enigma, between UAPX, it's all I can handle, man. It's all I could handle.
Uh-oh. I'm about to bring another layer.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Did you read our first headline? It's good news.
Is there really good news in the UFO? NATO contemplating UFO space traffic. What is this about?
Yep. And in the subtitle there, you'll see that the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies urges the alliance, NATO, to create an open source database. And so it, you know, interesting to consider, wondering whether or not to even waste time figuring out what makes this anthropomorphic. I'm not even going to bother with that word, but it's a very interesting topic. And so it has been brought forth. And so according to NASA, more than 85% of the stuff that we have up in space orbiting our planet is dead satellites, spent boosters, discharged mission dross, etc. And it's all about softball size or larger. And so factor in another 500,000 shards of the size of pencil tips, plus an estimated 100 million artificial particles on a micrometer scale. And so the odds of that safe and event-free deployment in low Earth orbit, or LEO, is shrinking. And so with that growing uncertainty, the accelerating vulnerability of such international asset vulnerability is starting to become a topic in front of NATO. And so last year, after monitoring lively UFO discussions at the Scientific Coalition for UFO Studies conference in Huntsville, Alabama, a Defense Department employee was sufficiently impressed to contact SCU co-founder Rich Hoffman with a proposition. The Supreme Allied Command Transformation Branch of NATO was sponsoring another round of space policy discussions. And so this was in Italy this time, with the innocuous workshop title of Space, Exploring NATO's Final Frontier. Question: would you be interested in attending and speaking? And Hoffman replied, Yes, emphatically. And so moving forward and addressing the UFO topic wasn't necessarily on NATO's program agenda. The Great Taboo would have slipped into time block and devoted to economic impact of expanding the alliance sphere. But it was pretty clear that at least a few stakeholders wanted to push NATO's margins. After all, they invited Ryan Graves to speak in Italy as well. And so it looks like data was put forth, and now 2 months after NATO's, mid-November 2-day conference in Bologna, Hoffman offers a quick explainer about how the Allies are fractured over the UFOs as a shared interest. So keep in mind, in this quote, he says, keep in mind that NATO is funded by every country, Hoffman said, and that only about 8 of the 30 members have actually paid their full bill. A lot of the other countries are struggling to pay the 2%, and they're required to pay it. So with things being so up in the air in the world right now, you could have a situation where NATO is interested in UAP, but other countries just aren't on board to choose and may just ignore it. And so it's not like the United States, from the context of our government, saying they just want to do something about it, then get everyone's support and move forward. So, Dave, what are your thoughts about bringing this serious topic before NATO and getting SCU on board to help us talk freely about it there?
Well, anytime we can have discussion about this, it's a good thing. Let's be honest. It is a good thing. What are they talking about, though? Because I think the problem that we have in this conversation is it's very one-sided towards the nuts and bolts of everything. Remember, if these things are coming into our sky, okay, something has to be flying them. If they're drones, who's flying the drones? If they are extraterrestrial, who is flying these craft? And we don't seem, or let's go back to the TTSA days. They did a great job of separating UFOs from extraterrestrials. They drew a very large Great Wall of China between the two subjects. But in reality, at least in my opinion, it has to be one or the other. If they're not from here, they're from somewhere else. And if they are from somewhere else, who is flying them? Whether it's by remote control, telekinesis, or there are beings within the craft. And there are only those options, Tim. And yet the conversations that are being had regarding the subject never brings up extraterrestrial life or any type of extraterrestrial craft. It's all about the nuts and bolts, and I don't think I'm a fan of that. I really don't. You can have every eyewitness who in the military who's ever seen a UFO come forward. What are they going to give you that the public can't give you?
Yeah, so Hoffman and Graves were allotted a scant 10 minutes apiece to finish their insights into the business end of the space domain. But there was a lot more spontaneity during their expansive Q&A sessions. And so obviously it was very much directed towards the flight safety. And so a lot of the Q&A was directed towards Ryan Graves in his experience and why he felt that potentially not only do we have the debris up there, but there are other objects that we may not even be aware of. They're also flight risk. And that was really the part that was trying to be pressed by Graves. And then Hoffman's challenge was trying to show NATO's NATO a path for rolling the phenomenon into its list of space environment concerns, just in a very general way, and picking up on Graves' riff on how so many near-miss scenarios helped fuel the creation of the military's all-domain anomaly resolution office, ARROW. And Hoffman urged listeners not to make the mistake of dismissing UFOs as an atmospheric anomaly. And so he illustrated with the famous 1976 Tehran incident, in which 2 Iranian jet fighters briefly lost power while pursuing a UFO. And so there's a lot of momentum at the UN currently. And so pointing that out in this case is also pivotal to helping NATO take a chance at discussing this in a very serious way. And so that does, in fact, roll us into our next topic of the evening. However, we'll hit that when we come back. But please, your feelings on them bringing up Tehran in particular, which was a phenomenal case with, I believe, Avi Jafar, I believe was the pilot's name.
And an old F4 Phantom.
Right, F4 Phantom, that's right. And it was at the Mehrabad airport, where it just had a massive impact on everyone around, including, now let's consider in that case also there was navigation and missile systems that had electromagnetic effects that were recorded. So it's a pretty good case for them to have brought up. So again, now we are bringing up the hazard aspect that you said that you're very frustrated with, but how do you feel they can, again, bring this to NATO's attention in a way and fashion that they can prove is a real topic that needs to be addressed on a planetary level?
Hey, once again, I think the idea that we have conversations going on is perfect. We need the conversations. The more this gets to as many countries as possible, the better it is that it opens up. And of course, they're going to, focus on the UFO aspect, right? We're not ready for aliens. The public is not ready for aliens. So you have to break it in. And using the Tehran incident back in the 1970s, early 80s, I think it happened before the Shah was deposed. That incident there was phenomenal. I mean, literally the 2 F4 Phantoms chasing around a UFO. It was very highly publicized. Where are those cases today, though?
Yeah.
If there's 300 plus sitting there, according to the U.S. government, where's the cockpit footage?
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, during their presentation, Hoffman did bring up the recent UFO that was seen in Russia, the UFO in the form of a ball over Rostov Oblast region in and around the January 3rd. And so, was it a Ukrainian drone, mistaken identity, or fabricated story just designed to monitor the interest level of the U.S. intelligence, all potential? But it was brought up as something that either way needed to be addressed as an issue to investigate the reality of it, so that either way they can make it a real topic or squash it and not have to worry about it in NATO's purview, at least.
Well, you know what? The main thing is they're talking about it. You got to start somewhere. It may not be the discussions that we want, all right? But you have to start somewhere. And that's always a good point. That is always a good point to make sure that, we are heading and trending in the proper direction. So good on them for getting the conversation started. And you know what? We'll have to also monitor to see how much, the U.S. government has influence over those words and those talks as they start to enhance. Because this subject isn't going away. It needs to get busier. It really does.
Yeah. How interesting was it, to highlight here the fact that there was a Defense Department employee just happened to be in the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies conference audience and heard Rich Hoffman talking, brings up some question marks. Makes you wonder who's out there listening.
Tim Seanor, the UFO Report continues on Spaced Out Radio. When we return, we are going to take a look at more UFO stories, including San Marino and Project Titan. We'll be right back. All right, we're clear.
Yeah. What a day. It was a good day. I was going to send you a funny little 2-minute video. Let's see. So my son and daughter are, 9 and 10, and they're really into making videos just like dad. And and so recently my company started doing commercials, and we had done a commercial for a national spot for somebody. Anyways, sure enough, my kids did their own version of that commercial with their puppets, and had the product they'd created their own version of the product. And it was the cutest thing I have ever seen in my life. And I must share it with you. You're going to laugh.
Oh, yeah. I want to see it.
Yeah. They list the ingredients. And of course, it's coming from a 10-year-old's mind. So
right,
it's just all fun and games. But that was my day, just hanging out, watching kid videos and doing a little editing myself.
Good for you.
Yeah, we spoke at some point. I think you were swamped at work, right? You're a busy man.
I was a busy man today.
Yeah. It's probably a good thing. It makes your work day go quick, right?
Sometimes.
So, Golden Nugget, Las Vegas.
The Golden Nugget, Las Vegas.
Exciting stuff. I wonder if the UFOs will be in the skies for us to see. That will be fun. I mean, if Melinda Leslie is there, we've got a really good chance of seeing it. She's got magic gear. I don't know.
Well, I think there's going to be enough. There really is going to be enough.
Oh, yeah.
Between you, Melinda, I'm waiting to hear back from Misha Johnson. And and then you and Terry and Science Bob was going to bring some stuff too.
I'm bringing radar.
You bring the radar, dude.
I'll bring the radar. It's portable.
Mm-hmm.
And Starlink, so we can do a show from out in the desert.
Absolutely.
Or something.
Absolutely.
You have a plan for your shows, though, don't you?
Well, we're there.
Yeah.
Everything's planned.
I love that.
It's going to be a great time.
I love that.
There
Mr.
There might even be random guy sightings.
Interesting.
Could you imagine random guy showing up at the Vegas party, flying into town with his cape and mask on?
And we wouldn't know that he was above us.
We would never know.
Flying silently.
We would never know.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. Everyone will have a chance to make some great connections.
Oh,
See some friends in person that you already have made online, The funny thing is meeting Dave, he's exactly what you see here on the screen. What you see is what you get. 100%. He's easy to play jokes on, though, so
What are you talking about?
Well, you're a bit of a prankster yourself.
What are you talking about? I don't do anything.
No.
When did I prank you?
No. You can look at his face right there. He screams, "Prank me!"
Yep. Random guy's gonna go out and he's gonna go out and put on a wig and
show up as somebody else.
He's gonna show up like I don't know, looking like Hollywood Hulk Hogan.
He could pull that off, actually.
He could totally pull that off.
Yeah.
Thank you, Super Chatters, Monica, Greg, Deb, Cat Chaser, Jeff, Atlantis, and Steve. Hey, Mr. Catfish, how you doing? And here we go with the next half hour, everyone. Rounded third, headed for home. It's going to be a close play at the plate, but we are safe. How you doing? Dave Scott here, Spaced Out Radio. I want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. You do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go. Final time tonight. We got our resident Timbit, little Timmy Seanor, and the UFO report going on right now, and we're heading to San Marino. What's up with Project Titan, my friend?
Yeah, interesting week. It's been so busy everywhere. And so Project Titan was finally approved by San Marino. And so UFOs are set to be discussed at the UN for the first time since 1978. So pretty big news. And so today, the Parliament of San Marino voted, not just today, I'm sorry, the 19th of January, Parliament of San Marino voted in favor to participate in Project Titan, meaning specifically that Marino will support and submit a proposal for the UN for the creation of a permanent office tasked with the preparation of a periodic global conference dedicated to the scientific study of UFOs, otherwise known as UAP. And so in total, 25 members voted in favor of the project, whilst 2 abstained and 2 voted against. But the proposal will now be submitted to the UN Secretary General before undergoing preliminary examination and discussion. Following this, the proposal would be submitted to a vote at General Assembly. And so if successfully passed, the UN would run the new offices, which organizes periodic conferences hosted by San Marino, becoming the, quote, Geneva of global UAP studies. These conferences would be accessible to private and state-backed researchers and organizations. And so, also known as Project Titan, the proposal was created and managed by Paolo Giazzardi on behalf of the the Center for Ufology Study in Nacional, or the CUN. And so Italy's main ufological organization and international coalition for extraterrestrial research is called ICER. And so now we know that in this quote, today the nation of San Marino has made a momentous decision, meaning that the UFO phenomenon will now be discussed where it belongs, at the United Nations, the highest council of humanity. And so this project is hugely important in today's world when observing nations are observing transmedium objects in their skies and seas. And so against the backdrop of conflicts, like all over the world battles, that we are now seeing in the headlines. It is this topic which can promote a positive cooperation so that we can help solve an enigma which we all face. And this one topic can unite our planet and counter our tendency for conflict. And so, what are your thoughts now that we know this is moving forward? Something also incredibly positive, am I right?
Well, I think it is positive. Anytime there's growth, there's positivity, right? And
Yeah.
that's what we're looking at here is is growth and positivity. And that's what we want, right? Is spreading the subject around. I mean, first, you're going to have NATO talking about it. Now with San Marino coming on in, that only means good things. The conversation will happen. The question that we have to be aware of, though, all these sorts of talks are great, Tim, but are they going to make it back to the public? Is the information going to make it back to the public? The only hope we have is that there isn't too much U.S. control regarding this subject heading into that conversation. Now San Marino is a sovereign nation surrounded by Italy, as it's kind of caught in the middle. There's only like 33,000 people in that entire country. But we hope that that sovereign nation can actually do something to bring positivity to this subject at a much higher level. That's the beauty of having a seat within the United Nations. Can it happen? Who knows? Depends on what the allies say. We know the U.S. isn't saying anything. They don't want to say anything, right? They're an enigma of their own. Your thoughts?
Well, I was excited to see Lou Elizondo behind this, and he actually came out recently with a statement in support of this decision. And in part of the statement, he even goes on to say that he and his group, we, in this quote, he says, "We have been working this issue diligently for several years and consider this a big win for all of humanity. 2023 is already turning out to be a monumental year for this topic, and I am proud to have been an integral part of Project Titan from its inception." And so, extremely positive words coming from someone that we know has been very close to this topic and has been very clear about his movement in this direction. And so, are we going to hear anything publicly, potentially through Lou Elizondo and his work? I mean, we are starting to see some buzz from him through Twitter and other sources in media. And so hopefully we will get a little bit of an idea of what is being talked about behind the closed doors of the UN. And so hopefully we won't only hear the topic of the threat narrative and what debris is in our skies. Maybe they will really discuss UFO and the reality of what you and I know is up there.
Well, and that's where we got to remain positive, because we don't know what that conversation is going to be like. That being said, we still need to be able to figure out where they're going with the conversation. That's what I want to know. Where are they going with the conversation? Just like I said before. Okay, is this about UFOs? Is this about aliens? Is it about both? We need to know.
Right. And let's also consider here the other side of the coin, because we know very much that this is an absolute repeat of a performance that took place 35 years ago. And they came to a conclusion back then that it wasn't an issue, right? And they were able to convince other countries that things that they were seeing were not of a great enough importance for them to spend time talking about it in the UN. Now we also know that they are going to be talking about this in other places. But the fact is that we don't know exactly how it is being discussed behind closed doors. Will it get brushed off? Will they see it as just another way for people to push their own personal narrative that appear polarized one way or another. And that is the danger of this non-transparency and no public access, no public oversight, no, I mean, you had a pretty good idea, having some form of public influence in there, whether it's just to listen or potentially represent. It needs to be there. And I think you're absolutely right. But I do feel that, we could see this just going down that same narrative that it spent 75 years trying to cover up, all of its misguided funding, all of its cover up programs, all of the skeletons in the closet. Will we see a continuation of that? Will they brush it aside in the UN? Are they going to brush it aside as we see it creeping towards the Pentagon? It's all very touch and go. It depends on who they're talking to and if they're listening.
I'm also curious to see on this, Tim, how long it takes other countries to react to the knowing that this subject is going to come up for discussion. It would also be interesting to know how many countries reach out to the leaders of San Marino to have private presidential type talks regarding UFOs and the topic at hand.
Yeah, they're going to have to, because recently Australia came out with a big unclassified document that names names, times, and places. And it includes some events that are absolutely unexplainable, and they include the details in this report. It's something that at some point is going to cross the right desk and go in front of the right people and become an undeniable fact, kind of the way we saw the Wilson Davis document brought into the fold this year. That was massive. We need more stuff like that being brought under scrutiny and looked into, because if valid, it verifies a lot of details in our history that have been covered up. And the fact the Pentagon claims to want to know, this committee was designed to dig up all of those dirty deeds, if you will, the cover-ups. They want to know about Roswell. Well, I hope that they do. I hope that they get the original newspaper clippings. I hope that they do the right due diligence and talk to the first and second-hand witnesses that are still available, because we know the clock is ticking on those people.
Is it about bringing experiences like earlier on you mentioned the Tehran incident? Is it about bringing those type experiences to the table at the UN, or is it about bringing the knowledge that we already have? Because there's many countries out there, due to national security, that probably don't want to get into a lot of the science behind this phenomena, whether it's the USA, Russia, China, to name three.
Yeah, and it's a good point that you're bringing up, because data from satellites, things like that we don't share publicly, do get shared. So when we're able to show things that are basketball size and larger that are just debris, and we see other things that are moving that are questionable, well, we're able to share that information on a high level. Now, assuming they gave that information just in this article, that information exists. So what that tells us as the audience is that they can absolutely prove one way or another whether this needs to be discussed and how it needs to be discussed, and at what point it needs to be elevated to we need to do something now. And I'm not sure if that was directly your question.
Well, let's get into it. Little team of Seanor. Let's say you're San Marino. How are you wanting to get into this conversation?
Right. Well, obviously, and I know from people that are close to this topic that the obvious UFO, let's just call it tourism factor, was the big draw for them initially. And I think that has been a big part of the conversation, knowing that this is a little town that does depend on tourism. Now, let's also discuss the fact that it could bring quite a lot of highlight to the fact that this is in existence. And if it can be topical and pivotal on a movement, let's call it the new Geneva for this topic. I liked that, because we need that kind of neutrality on this topic, because yes, some of this will be our own debris. It will be our own satellites or military things, if you will. And so we need to collectively weed that out. And the discussion needs to be had on a level that we don't need to know about as the public. We need to know the results as the public, but I don't think we need to know how they get to it, because in all fairness, there are definitely, Dave, I think you'll even admit, certain things that we're not ready for as the public. We don't want to know that they can read your ID when you hold it up in the air. We don't want to know that, right? We can assume it's true. But I think that it digs a little bit deeper, and I think that it is something that absolutely needs to be discussed. And why not a beautiful part of the world of San Marino, Italy?
Oh, hey, I'm not saying it isn't a beautiful part of the world. I mean, that's great for tourism, but in the end, where are we going with that conversation? I know I sound like a broken record. I know I do. But
Yeah.
how much are they going to open up? See, here's what I think happens if I could give my scenario,
Please.
and I could be completely wrong. I think what happens now is the leaders of San Marino, whether they have a president or prime minister, I'm not too sure, probably is going to take some phone calls from the U.S. government, from Britain, from other allies, Italy, of course, probably a lot of the European Union. What kind of aliens are you going to be talking about there? Are you getting into lasers? Are you getting into physics? Are you getting into the chemistry of it all? How are you doing with this? What are you doing with this? And that's where some of that deep conversation is going to happen. And I think that's where maybe some of the allies say, you know what, you may not want to bring this part of the conversation up. You may not want to bring up the whole idea that there is no threat narrative. You may not want to bring up aliens and ET contact. You may not want to bring up any sort of certain photographs or videos because our enemies may not like it. There's a lot of conversation that is going on, or at least I would assume will go on before San Marino gets their opportunity to stand up at the podium at the UN and talk about UFOs.
Yeah, and I think the way it really worked is that there were a group of people from all over the world that sat in San Marino and discussed whether this topic would go before the UN, is my understanding, because 25 members of that group voted in favor, right, while 2 abstained and 2 voted against. They weren't all from San Marino. This is a collective group that decided, and so the proposal will now be submitted to the UN's Secretary General before undergoing a preliminary examination and discussion. And then following that, the proposal would be submitted to a vote at the General Assembly. So it's got a long way to go still. This is very much the very beginning, right? And they're only proposing to put together a committee and basically, like we're saying, a Geneva setup sort of scenario in San Marino where they would address it annually. And so it's the creation of a permanent office there, preparation of a periodic global conference also dedicated. So let's consider that this has a long way to go. It'll probably go through because it'll absolutely fit the bill for what's happening. Everyone seems to be in support so far. So it's just interesting to see who is saying yes and who is saying no. And a lot of the countries that you have to assume are saying yes have a stockpile of evidence. I know Spain has evidence. Australia has evidence, and they're willing to talk about it. They're not so hung up on the details of how they acquired it like the United States are. They're not so hung up on secrecy. And so we may see this topic prevail there.
Can I play devil's advocate here for a second?
Please.
Okay. The United States is the world's bodyguards. Australia, my home here in Canada, San Marino, every other dinky little country out there that has a military that's still using most of their gear that's 40 plus years old. Of course, they are not going to be in this for anything else. It's easy for them. It's an easy topic to, explore. There's nothing on the line. Whereas, we may bug the American government and the American military for how many secrets they're keeping, and we do on this show on a nightly basis. You know that. That's why it's called Devil's Advocate right now. But when you're literally protecting the world from a nut bar in Russia and another nut bar in China and a nut bar in North Korea and other nut bars around the world, you have to be able to have some toys that nobody knows about. That's what Area 51 and places like that are for. Right? I mean, that's way off the UFO front. But if they are getting some of that technology from back engineering crash retrievals, if there is any crash retrievals, which I tend to believe there are, others that we know will say no, random guy. We still have to be prepared for the technology to protect us from some moron out there who wants to get goofy. So there is that, Tim, as we got about a minute to go.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But that's why the conversation needs to be kind of now. And I feel if it's a now or never, right? It got passed by 35 years ago. Now is the time. So I see it getting all the way forward. I see it passing. I see this topic being addressed annually. I see reports. I see it being addressed. Again, I do feel like the fact that they pressed it with the urgency of it being a conflict in our airspace, and we are putting more and more things up into the air, it needs to be addressed. Now is the time. And that's why I'm surprised that 2 abstained and 2 voted against. That's as good as a vote no. Why would 4 people not want to know? That is literally like, don't look up.
Very true. Very, very true. My friend, it is that time of the night where we have to say good night to you. So thank you so much for being with us on the UFO Report once again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Are you going to chat with the random guy tonight, or what do you got planned for the rest of the night?
Well, right now I'm going to end the show.
Okay.
And I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you.
To you, to Swamp Dweller, to Wallace Wagner for coming on, making some great radio tonight. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I know you're out there somewhere. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. You take us home now. Take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we got room for them too. Good night.